All right, camera's rolling. Ezekiel chapter 25. No quiz today, but lots of reading, so stuff bites in between the reading. Okay. And what I'm going to try to do is attempt to pull up a map. Let's see if it actually works this time.
The map.
Hey, yeah, the book of Ezekiel chapter 25.
What's today's date? Today's the 14th, right?
Hey, you guys got the zesty sauce?
Do not know.
No, she gave you the zesty sauce.
And it's coming up.
She put zesty sauce in her bag.
Right about. Says we're connected. Maybe I have to hit this button or something.
It's in Old Testament.
Yeah. Oh, wait, I'm actually right.
Yeah, seriously. Is the TV even on?
Yeah. Well, this thing is.
How would you even quantify zesty?
Maybe it is.
I don't think the TV's on.
It's like,
Well,
hey,
that would explain it.
try this
I think
flavor
it just
packet.
turned off. Nope, wait. Thank you, Parker. You're a genius.
I mean,
Sometimes.
Okay.
Parker's at his best when he's. Nope, I already took my shot for that.
Ah, there we have it.
your bullets are like
A
water.
worthwhile map. Alright, can you guys see this?
Yeah.
We're gonna go back over here.
Oh, nice maps, dude.
Well, I like that.
Alright, you see these regions?
Yeah.
So that gives you an idea of, now where is Israel on this map?
On the right.
Approximately where?
It's.
You should say center.
Yeah.
It's approximately dead center. Israel is right here. You see this little, that's Samaria right here. There's Ashdod. That's, you know, the Philistine regions. This is the Dead Sea. There's the Sea of Galilee. Wait, I think we can do a zoom kind of a thing majigger. We can do that real quick. Just for fun. Go to this mode here. Okay.
Oh, cool.
Oh.
You see it now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's tight.
Oh, yes.
This is the region where Israel is. And remember, it's Judah is all that's left in the south. Samaria is what?
North.
North, specifically, what is Samaria to
Judah?
the north? It's Israel.
Yeah.
It's their capital
Yeah,
city.
their capital
So the
city.
capital city, Samaria, was taken, what year was it taken again?
596?
No, way earlier. Remember, Assyria did it. We're in the 700s.
701.
722 BC.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
722, Sennacherib takes over Assyria. Then he comes down later and fails in 701 when he tries to take over
That's right. Okay.
Jerusalem, which is surprisingly not on the map. And then later on we have more history going. Let me see if I've got more.
So that map would be around the time, I guess, after Ezekiel?
That map that we just looked at is probably before Ezekiel. That would have been around the time, yeah, because Egypt was still a world power, and, well, wait, did it say Babylon, or did it say Syria?
It said Babylonian.
Then you're right, it would have been the time of Ezekiel and afterwards. Yeah, because that's when Babylon was the main power. This is Assyria, and their conquest down there.
And that's when Israel
This
was
is a
still
big
alive.
map here, if that helps. I don't think it does. This is
Tesseract.
the liver. that
Yeah,
we
the
found.
liver. Yeah.
The sheep's liver that the Babylonians would use, that it talks about, the last time we talked about Ezekiel, it talked about them divining the future from the liver. You know, look at the liver, you use whatever you're going to use, do what I said. You know, get a move on.
Divination.
Well, we found one that comes from the region of Babylon, and that's what it looks like. It's a clay model of a sheep's liver, and they would use it and look at it and say, oh, I know the future now because I've looked at the liver of a sheep.
Kind of crazy.
So, yeah, isn't that though? Isn't it though? Alright, so that map, oh, that's close up. Oh, this map is going to be important later on, so lock it in right now. These regions. Alright, I want to do a little bit of review because it's important. Aram. There's another name for Aram or Aram, and it is Syria.
Oh, okay.
Syria or Aram. The reason why that's significant is going back to Isaiah, we have what's called the Syro-Ephraimitic invasion, which is the starting plot of the book of Isaiah. All right, so what that is Assyria is the big powerhouse, and so a lot of other nations are scared about that. And so because of that, Israel wants to get together and have an alliance with Syria, and they want Judah to join in. But the stupid king of Judah, Ahaz, says, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to join your alliance. And so these two together, Syro-Ephraim is another name for the northern tribe of Israel. Syro-Ephraimitic invasion, I believe, was 734 BC.
Yeah.
What that was is they were going to invade and overthrow Ahaz as king and put another king there that would, follow their treaty and alliance against Assyria. But instead, Ahaz decided to take the money from the temple instead of trusting God and paid off Assyria to join him, and it was a bad move altogether. He said no to what God
At that
wanted.
time, Ahaz had like the
blank check from
the
God.
blank check from God.
Isaiah the prophet came to him and said, hey, God's going to take care of you. Don't be afraid of this. So that's the political background. But I want you to see these places. Aram, Phoenicia, obviously Israel and Judah, Philistia, Moab. Down here you can't really see it, but this is Edom.
Oh, okay.
Which is, what book of the Bible? What minor prophet is all about?
Obadiah.
First one we studied? Yeah, Obadiah. Big judgment against Edom. Edom descended from who? What's the guy's name that Edom?
Isaac.
Down a little bit further in the line. Keep going.
Ishmael.
Isaac had two sons.
Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau.
Jacob and Esau.
So
And
Esau.
Esau is where the Edomites come from. And they, throughout history, were causing problems with God's people too. So all these places, most of these places are going to be talked about today. That's why I want you to see them there.
Okay, cool.
All right, off with this. Isn't that great? That's like the first time it's ever actually worked.
Because it's late.
We tricked this.
Sarah's been doing all her work at the
All our
internet
network
today,
work,
so
yeah. Isn't that great?
my stuff's working for the first time in like weeks.
In forever.
Wish I ever gonna fix the MiDA house internet.
Okie dokie. I'll read the first verse because it's nice and short, and then we'll go around the room. And
Let me just,
Cart, do you want to read too?
Sure, bud.
Okay. Well, open to Ezekiel 25 then in one of those Bibles you got there.
let me switch to ESV.
If not,
real quick.
we'll skip you. That's what I want to ask.
I
All right,
got
chapter
that.
25
I'm on
says.
Hey, you can be in whatever version.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I actually like having multiple versions here because
Are you in ESV or?
I'm in the ESV.
Oh, let me switch to
Where are we again? Sorry?
Ezekiel chapter 25, and we're going to read the first 7 verses, one verse at a time, and then we'll keep
Awesome.
moving. We're going to try to cover 4 chapters, so stay awake.
Sure. Let's do it. Bring it
You guys
on.
ready? Ezekiel chapter 25. The word of the Lord came to me.
Nice. Son of man, turn and face the land of Ammon and prophesy against its people.
Say to them, hear the word of the sovereign Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Because you said, aha, I suppose, over my sanctuary when it was desecrated, and over the land of Israel when it was laid waste, and over the people of Judah when they went into exile. Sorry.
You good?
Therefore, behold, I am handing you over to the people of the east for a possession, and they shall set their encampments among you, and make their dwellings in your midst. They shall eat your fruit, and they shall drink your milk.
Verse 5.
I will turn Rabbah into a pasture for camels and Ammon into a resting place for sheep. Then you will know that I am the Lord.
For thus says the Lord God, because you have clapped your hands and stomped your feet and rejoiced with all malice within your soul, against the land of Israel.
I will raise my fist of judgment against you. I will give you as plunder to many nations. I will cut you off from being a nation and destroy you completely. Then you will know that I am the Lord.
Okay, good. We'll pause there for a second. So, this prophecy, for once, is not directed to the Israelites, to the people of Judah. Who is it directed towards?
It's
People of Ammon.
yeah, Ammonites.
Yeah, the people of Ammon. Now, why would God want to have Ezekiel giving prophecies against other nations besides his own people? Why would God care about that?
Kind of shows like how broad his powers are.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not just the Israelites.
It certainly does. Does it show anything else?
I haven't gotten deep enough into the reading yet, but do you think it's, well, I mean, obviously, you can, but is it anything like the minor prophet, Amos, who basically went around and pointing the finger and then got to the one that he wanted? Is it like kind of backwards from that, like comparing them to all these other places?
That's a great way to put it. It's backwards from that. The idea is, now let's review the history here, just so we can remember. In a map, this is the region of Egypt, and then Israel is right here, Sea of Galilee, Dead Sea. So this is the region of Judah that's left. Historically, where we are in the history right now is Babylon over here. The north is gone, it's been wiped out. Babylon over here has come in waves and exiled people from Judah. The people from Judah thought, oh man, we're untouchable. God loves us so much. He'll never let anything bad happen to us. And the prophets are saying, no, that's not true. If you keep sinning like you do, God's going to let something bad happen to you, and that's going to be Babylon. He's going to use a wicked nation, the Babylonians, to deport you guys. And that happens in successive waves. Ezekiel, so we got Babylon up here, over here. Ezekiel is one of the guys in 597 who was deported to Babylon. 10,000 Jews were deported to Babylon, roughly 597. But there's going to be a bigger deportation in 586, so 10, 11 years later, all right? But that's where we are historically. We're talking about Ezekiel. Ezekiel is talking to the people of Judah, but they're not at home right now. They are in the land of Babylon in exile. And then God lets him see visions where he'll have not flashbacks, flashovers.
Flash forwards?
Not flash forwards either, but he'll let him picture what's going on right here in Judah, even though he is physically over here in Babylon. And he'll go out and he'll talk to the elders of the people who are in Babylon, but God will let him see what's going on over here too at times for prophetic reasons. You see what I mean?
Cool.
And some of those prophecies concern the temple and stuff, and a lot of them were just really bad. So anyway, that's kind of what's been going on there. But all that we've really talked about up to this point is talking about Israel, Judah, God's people. This is one of the first major times that he's switching over to Ammon. And why is that, do you think? Well, remember what we studied in chapter 18? What was the big focus of chapter 18? The fathers eat sour grapes.
Oh, the fact that the father's actions doesn't cause the son to face the punishment for it, even though that they might have lasting effects. It's not like the punishment itself is not
exactly. Ezekiel hammers that. He says, hey, you keep saying, oh, we're getting punished for what our parents did. No, that's not true. You are punished for what you do. Yeah. God holds people guilty for what they did. Yeah, the effects of sin hit you, sure. But as far as guilt goes, it's fair. So, why would it be fair for God to just punish his own people when there are a lot of other nations around here who are also wicked? So I think that's one of the main reasons why he kind of sidesteps and say, hey, you know what? It's not just you guys. Let me tell you, these guys are all going to get punished too, because they were obviously wicked people as well. God's fair. You should have known better, so that's a bigger deal. I think God considers it a bigger deal when you have knowledge not to do something and you do it anyway, versus a lot of these people were more ignorant, but still, they did wrong, and they shouldn't have. So that's why he turns and he's talking to Ammon. Now, Ammon if we recall, Ammon is the region right over, right in this particular area right here. So we're talking about, I'll just put it next. This would be the region of Ammon right here. We're gonna shoot around the area, these little places there. Let's see. Let's go ahead and pick up. Judges 10:9 is a reference if you want to write that down. That's one of the first mentioning of the Ammonites and the problems they caused. Way back in the Judges. That was a long time ago.
Judges 10:9?
Judges chapter 10 verse 9.
Okay.
Let's read verses 8 through 11 now.
Okay.
Where we leave off.
I read 7.
Okay. This is about Mount Seir, it looks like.
This is what the sovereign Lord says. Because Moab and Seir, is that Siri?
Yeah, Seir.
Seir.
It's not Siri.
Yeah.
Apple is not. Ezekiel's so prophetic. He knew. I'm just kidding.
Supposed to Pacific.
Because Moab and Seir said, "Look, Jodah has become like all the other nations."
Therefore, I will lay open the flank of Moab from its cities on its frontier. The glory of the country, Beth Jeshmoth, Baal Meon, and Kiriathama.
You're right, I think.
Sure.
I guess.
Sounds good to me. Keep going.
I will give Moab along with the Ammonites to the people of the east as a possession, so that the Ammonites will not be remembered among the nations.
And I will execute judgment upon Moab. Then they will know that I am the Lord. Now, why does God execute judgment? That last phrase I just said is the giveaway, but what is the purpose of God doing this judgment and announcing it ahead of time? So everyone knows what.
He is the Lord.
Yeah, it's simple as that. But it's just like the Old Testament prophet. If what the prophet says doesn't come true, he's a false prophet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So God says, he doesn't just offer the fact that I'm going to do it. He offers the fact that I'm going to do it so that you'll know that I'm the Lord. AKA, we're supposed to pay attention to what he said in the first place so that we can put 2 and 2 together and you have strong evidence that, wow, God really is God. So that's why the Old Testament prophecy is useful for determining evidence for God, because if what he said physically, historically really did come true, how do you explain that? Well, it must be because God is the Lord and he said that this will happen. When it says an enemy from the east, so he just transitioned to what place?
Ammonites.
To Moab. Moab is down here. Ammonites are up here. Moab is down here. Mount Seir, by the way, S-E-I-R, is it's a big mountainous area that is shared between Moab and Edom, which is down here. I guess I could use letters, huh? All right, let's A for Ammon. We'll do M for Moab. E down here for Edom. Mount Seir is going to be in this region right here, and it was shared. Usually, it's talking about the Edomites when it talks about Mount Seir. But we're talking about the Moabites here, so don't get that confused. And they did share part of it. So, but when you read Obadiah, he's going to be talking about Mount Seir, and he's talking about the Edomites all the time. So,
I have a quick question. In
Sure.
verse 10, it says, in the New Living Translation, it says, "And I will hand Moab over to the nomads from the eastern desert." Is that just like another, I'm guessing it's just another way to call them.
that's what it says, nomads from the
Yeah, it
eastern
says
desert.
nomads
But
from the eastern deserts. Just
what
as
does
I
your
handled,
version say? Because mine says,
Just as
to
I
the
handled.
people of the east.
yeah, it says,
Which
from
way
the
is east?
eastern desert.
What
East is this way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's over here? Who owns all this?
Assyria. Or wait, no.
yeah, people of the east.
Babylon right now.
Babylon. But it could also be referring to raiders that are in this area too, in Arabia, I suppose. But usually when you think of north, or sometimes as well as the east, you think of the enemy, because Babylon covered north and east. They were huge. But you could be right. Let me see if I have any notes on that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's what I have written down here too, that when it says people of the east, it probably is a reference. Smith thinks it's a reference to desert raiders. So people from that region who would go around looting and stuff.
Gotcha.
The old time pirates. So, I guess that makes sense. Good thinking. Okay, the names, in case you're interested, they're Beth Jeshimoth means the house of waters. The house of waters. It was on the plain of Moab, opposite Jericho, and it was about 1,000 feet below sea level. Keep that in mind. Baal Meon, which means the house of Baal's habitation. The house of Baal's habitation. And then the other place is Kiriathaim, or however you pronounce it. That actually means double city. Which is interesting. Double city. And those two were actually on a plateau about 2,000 feet above sea level. So we're not talking a flatland here. We're talking about kind of a real hilly kind of place that they are. And you'll know a lot of times prophets will do that. Instead of just saying over and over again, Ammon, Moab, blah, blah, blah. They'll call out specific cities, that city. Florida's going to be destroyed. I mean, Orlando's going to be smashed. Jacksonville's going to be annihilated. It's just a way of emphasizing the devastation instead of just saying Florida, 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 Florida.
Probably a little bit off topic, but so Kara Tham or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one you said that was like 2,000 feet above sea level.
That and Baal Meon are.
What did Kiriathaim mean again?
So
they were
means double city.
about 2,000 feet above sea level.
2,000 feet. So wouldn't that, just fun fact I guess for me, wouldn't that put them 1,000 feet above Jerusalem? Because isn't Jerusalem 1,000 feet up?
I don't remember what Jerusalem is, but Jerusalem is up on a chief hill.
Yeah, I'm probably thinking about Denver.
I don't know.
Just
You're going to get me
Yeah.
confused if we talk all of those questions, because I don't know.
Sorry.
Let's read 9 through 14. Keep plugging away. Gabe, is that you?
Yeah.
All right.
What verse are you starting at?
Wait, I already read 9.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're
I'm
on
sorry.
12.
Why did I say, I'm sorry, 12 through 14. I had them messed up. I'll fix that.
I think it's Parker's.
Yeah, it's on me.
Oh.
Sorry, I was just finishing up a note.
All right, what does that say?
Alright, 12. This is what the Sovereign Lord says. The people of Edom have sinned greatly by avenging themselves against the people of Judah.
Therefore, this is what the Sovereign Lord says. I will stretch out my hand against Edom and kill both man and beast. I will lay it to waste, and from Teman to Deman they will fall by the sword.
And I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel. And they shall do in Edom according to my anger, and according to my wrath, and they shall know my vengeance, declares the Lord.
Okay, we'll pause there for a second. This is interesting, but let me ask you guys some questions first. And Andrew, I'll pick on you.
Okay.
It says that God uses his hand, right? Like with my mighty hand. But I thought God wasn't a human. So why would it say that God has a hand and that he's beating people with his cosmic hand? He's like slapping people? Why do you think that is? Do you have an idea?
Well, I guess I'll use from my perspective, when he says that, it gives me a mental picture, something that we can relate to.
Okay.
We
I like
see that. People fight, they use their hand, or when people are in destruction, they use their hands and swing swords around. So
I totally agree with you. I think you're right on that. It's a way of symbolically picturing what's going on. But how else could you say it? I mean, God's going to destroy you. Well, he's going to use, and they would use symbolism. I mean, there are other ways you could say it, but commonly it'd be the hand. What's another one that is used to represent power?
His foot will crush them.
Okay, when I'm thinking of Jesus in Hebrews, enemies underneath his feet and the conquering king. What about the arm? Is the arm of the Lord too short to save, or is the ear too dull to... It talks about the strength of his arm.
Well, it talks about his arms stretched out a lot in Isaiah.
Yeah, not that God has physical arms, but it's a picture of his strength and power. And there's another one too. What's the other one? Lincoln. Arm. Oh, horn, which is an animal reference. The horns of an animal represented power or strength. So when they talk about something with his horn or 10 horns, it's like, whoa, super powerful, the idea we're supposed to get. not super ugly, which is what we Americans would think. Ooh, 10 horns. You know, you'd think you dated somebody like that once, but
I rather
it's
think big
not
buck.
the same thing. Okay, oh, but interesting. It says that Edom is going to be judged by who? Who's going to do it?
Israel.
How is that going to be possible? How is Israel going to judge? First of all, the Israelites are destroyed. The people from Judah, who are also sometimes referred to as Israelites, yeah, they're around, but they're all getting deported to Babylon and they're wasting away. Their city is getting destroyed. How on earth are they going to be executing any kind of judgment against the Edomites?
Is it like referring to the future when they will eventually be?
It has to be referring to the future somehow.
Yeah. When the Persian Empire takes over Babylon. And they're released.
That's part of the future, but it's actually going even further than that. This is going to go all the way up to the 2nd century BC, so that's going to be between 200 and 100 BC. And what period is that called? The period right before 400 down to 0, we'll just say.
Intertestamental?
The intertestamental period, or
What
the
was
400
the-
years of silence.
What was the date again?
It's 2nd century BC.
Okay.
So, but you know, between 1 and 200 BC, that 400-year period, after basically from Persia, after that till we get to Rome, is a big gap in the Bible. It doesn't say anything about that at all. But we do have some historical documents that talk about things that happen. They're not inspired, they're not the Word of God or anything, but some of them offer some valuable information. And one of those that's probably the most valuable of the bunch of the Apocrypha. That's what the Catholic Bibles sometimes have, those books thrown in the middle. They like them for certain teaching reasons, but they were never recognized as scripture. But one of those books, 1 Maccabees, and you can write this down, 1 Maccabees 5:65, gives a little reference there about this man named Judas Maccabees. And he was a Jewish guy, a Jewish leader who led a revolt. And in the process of doing that, let me see what I got written down here. Yeah, he came into the area where the Edomites were left, which is a very small remnant of them, and he conquered them. So that literally did happen almost 200 years before Christ. So this prophecy was actually fulfilled by these leftover, little bits of Israelites who came down and led a revolt, and he conquered them. So, interesting fact.
Good job, Judas.
Yeah, good job, Judas, and good job, Ezekiel, for getting another prophecy right. Yet again. So that's interesting. All right, 15 through 17.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. Chapter 25, verse 15.
This is what the sovereign Lord says. Because the Philistines acted in vengeance and took revenge with malice in their hearts, and with ancient hostility sought to destroy Judah.
Therefore, thus says the Lord God, behold, I will stretch out my hand against the Philistines. I will cut off the Kerethites and destroy the rest of the seacoast.
I will execute terrible vengeance against them to punish them for what they have done, and when I have inflicted my rage, they will know that I am the Lord.
Inflicted my rage.
Or, sorry, inflicted. I don't know why I said
Inflicted. Inflicted the infliction.
There you go.
Yeah. So, the Philistines, have we ever heard about them before?
Yes.
Where do you remember hearing about the Philistines being a problem?
Judges.
Okay. Yes, Samson and the Philistines, you're right. What about in Kings at all, or with any of the kings? Did any of the kings have a problem with them?
David.
Yeah, David.
David did. Before him,
Goliath.
Saul died in a battle with the Philistines.
Oh, yeah.
So Saul was a big deal. They were a constant problem. Now the Philistines, remember Philistines with a PH. It's like fat but with a PH, So the Philistines were in this region over here, right up there. And they were constantly causing problems, even way back as early as 1200 BC and on. The way it seems to go is that the people of God would get powerful and they would conquer the Philistines and put them at bay. and then the Philistines would slowly gain power, and as the people would rebel against God, they would lose power, and then they'd start looting them, and then God would deliver them, and the power balance just kept going back and forth. Remember the story of Ehud too?
Yep.
The
Yeah.
King Eglon. Who
Yeah,
was,
Eglon's the fat guy who.
yeah, and that was the Philistines, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm
The
pretty
fish-
sure.
the fish god?
Stabbed him in the stomach, and the hilt of his sword got stuck in his
Yeah,
belly.
I thought it was their false god Dagon, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm mixing Samson's story together. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Good, glad you caught me that. Yeah, that's not right.
Dude, that's a
Strike that.
nasty story, though.
Mm.
We had to,
Oh,
we had
it's
to
so
teach
funny.
that in Kids
Then he
City.
climbs out through the bathroom. I mean, through the sewage pipelines or whatever. That's how he makes his
My
getaway.
favorite part of that is when it says that the guards waited until they were embarrassed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they waited till the point of embarrassment.
How
That's
long do
crazy.
you have to wait?
I know.
Like,
Oh,
a
that's
day?
funny. Now,
Oh, because he killed him.
On the
Through
toilet,
the
basically.
toilet, yeah.
one of the things that you should have down in your notes just for your own edification is the reason why the Philistines were able to cause so much trouble is because they discovered ironworking
Oh.
earlier than Israel did. They had the secrets of ironworking, Israel had bronze weapons. So they had a little bit of an advantage with that, and they used it. So that was an interesting fact that I didn't know before. So that was
Wait, say that
interesting.
one more time?
The Philistines discovered ironworking, iron, before Israel, the Israelites did. So they were able to go into battle with iron weapons, where all the Israelites had would just be bronze, softer, weaker metal to fight with. And so that was back then that was technology. It was a big, big deal.
It says that Eglon was king of Moab.
Moab, thank you. We talked about them too, didn't we? Thank you for correcting me on that. This is what happens when you teach too late. Doc Smith says some things that I really like when it talks about these nations. He pulls us back to the promise to Abraham. God promised Abraham, I'm going to make of you a great nation, and I will what? I will do this with those who bless you, and I will do this with those who curse you. What does he say?
Bless.
I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. Well, we see that being fulfilled now because these are some of the nations that cursed Israel, whether through battle, through their actions, their thoughts, or whatever. They were a curse to Israel, and so God's judgment is coming through. And he says the Ammonites represent the people who gloat over the misfortune of God's people. Moabites are the people who would try to secularize God's people. Remember, Moabites were the women came in and tried to seduce all the men and cause a bloodbath, ultimately. The Edomites could illustrate those people who are vindictive and just hostile. Maybe they're not out and out abusing you, but they're looking to get little jabs in whenever they can. They want to look high and mighty to everyone else, but they're out to get you. And then the Philistines would be the people who actually acted out, like, no, they come in and they persecute you. I don't know, I thought that was interesting how you can look at each nation, we can look at each nation, and yet it's kind of a picture of the same kind of fights we're fighting today on a spiritual battle level. The world comes at us from different angles, and we got to be ready for all of it. Some of it's more subversive, some of it's more temptation, some of it's just plain persecution, plain and simple, hard. That's it. So, any questions about that chapter?
Moabites were the tempting ones?
Yeah, the Moabites, and he's going to, I believe the next chapter is going to hone in on that a little bit more. Is it the next chapter? No, it's not. Okay, maybe it was this chapter, but you're right. The Moabites are the ones that Balaam and Balak was the king. Balaam was the sorcerer, and Balak hired him to curse God's people, the Israelites. But Balaam wanted to do it. First time he inquired of God, God said no. Then they came back offering more money, and then the second time he said, God, they're offering more money. And God said, sure, go ahead, even though he didn't really want him to go. And that's when, remember, the donkey talks to him, it has more sense than Balaam himself does. The donkey's more intelligent. And the funny part about that story is that he talks right back to the donkey.
Yeah.
Like, if your donkey talked to you, you don't just be like, yeah, whatever, He was not thinking straight.
Yeah.
But anyway, he goes, and every time he tries to curse Israel, what happens?
Bless.
He blesses them instead. And so Balak gets so frustrated at him that he's like, I'm not giving you money. You keep blessing the enemy, you know. And this is the Moabites. But later on, Balaam gives some advice. He says, well, I know what you can do to bring them down. All you got to do, if you want to bring down a group of strong guys, they're big, they're strong, that means they have a lot of testosterone.
Get the
If
women.
they have a lot of testosterone, that means send your women, your best looking women out there. And it worked. Sadly, it worked. They said, send them all out there, you know, let them seduce the men. And sure enough, the men were like, oh, this wasn't the kind of battle I was expecting to fight. Hey. And then they gave into it. And because of that, God was so angry that he killed 24,000 of them. 23,000 in one day just got struck down. So that was at the hand of Moab, at the hand of a prophet, more like a sorcerer of God, that awful.
What was the guy's name that drove the spear through the two people? What was his
Oh,
name?
Phinehas. Phinehas is the one that was
Top
so
nine
angry. Yeah, he was so angry for God's justice when he saw. And by the way, he's a leader. He's a tribal leader, so he's allowed to execute justice. It's not good for you to be like, I see a Christian sinning, and then slap, kill him. No, that's bad. But he was actually one of the leaders of the nation who was allowed to execute justice on behalf of the government. And guess what? The punishment is death for sleeping with somebody else like that. They weren't supposed to do it. So, he was so angry that in one blow, he stabbed it through the man and the Moabite woman that he was sleeping with. Which apparently they weren't doing good things if he was able to stab it through both of them at one time. So, but because of that, God was like, wow. And I love it because he calls him out. He's like, because of that guy, I'm stopping all this punishment. I'm so proud of him. Which there again, we talked about it. Every time God's eyes roam the earth, every time he looks, what's he looking for?
One righteous. Or righteous people.
Broader than that. Not just righteous people. Every time God looks at the earth.
He's looking for a righteous act.
Yes, good.
Mm.
A lot of times we Americans have this idea, oh, God's looking for us to make a mistake, and Christians make it sound worse. Every time the Bible talks about God's eyes roaming around, he's looking for something righteous. He's looking for something good to brag about, which, is fascinating, but it seems to hold true. It's encouraging, though. However, Satan, when he roams the earth, what does he do? When he's roaming the earth, that's the story of Job. He's looking for bad, and every time God points out, hey, you seen Job? Isn't he wonderful? Well, no, he's not. Anyway, we're getting distracted there. Chapter 26 now, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. I felt like I missed something before. Oh, that at the very beginning of chapter 25, when he says in verse 3, say to the Ammonites, hear the word of the Lord. I just want you to know that's the strongest Old Testament phrase for inspiration that you could use. The way it's said, hear the word of the Lord, you can't say it any stronger. This is like an oracle from God. There's no higher inspiration claim than that. So it's not like, we can't really get the emphasis in English, but it's there. So now in chapter 26, I'll go ahead and start because I don't remember exactly where we left off. Because he starts off with a date. He says,
dude, this is crazy.
in the 11th year, on the first day of the month, the word of the Lord came to me. So, here's the date. September 18th, 587 BC. September 18th, 587 BC.
This is at the very beginning of chapter 26.
Very beginning of chapter 26.
Mine says.
Is that what it says?
Mine says on February 3rd, during the 12th year of King Jehoiakim captivity, this message came to the Lord, or came to me from the Lord.
What do you guys have?
26?
What do you have for
at the very
chapter
beginning of
26?
chapter 26.
I got in the 11th month of the 12th year.
Yeah, I got in the 11th year on the first day of the month.
Yeah.
And what does it say after that? The word of the Lord came to me?
The word of the Lord came to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
No
man,
reference to Jehoiakim at all? Did any of you guys have a You're in Ezekiel 26, right? And
Ezekiel chapter 26.
And it references
a
Jehoiakim?
message for Tyre.
Yeah,
Yeah?
a prophecy against Tyre.
Yeah, it
Mine-
says
yeah.
on February 3rd, during the 12th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity, this message came to me from the Lord.
Is there no footnote?
Let me see what,
Do you have a footnote
Yeah, I
there?
have a footnote and I don't see.
What does yours say? Okay.
It says,
He's got
it
NLT.
says what he says. It says, Hebrew in the 11th year on the first day of the month of the ancient Hebrew lunar calendar.
Okay.
wow.
Since an
Yeah.
element is missing in the date formula here, scholars have reconstructed this probable reading in the 11th month of the 12th year on the first day of the month. This reading would put this message on February 3rd, 585 BC. Also see note on 1:1.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just switched
Okay.
to the ESV and it said what they said. So.
Interesting. Well, going with the other date is going to be September 18th, 587
September
BC.
18th, 587.
But is it the same year? Does it say 587? Gabe, in the footnote?
585.
585?
September 18th, is that what you said?
That is interesting. Yeah, September 18th, 587. If the 587 date is right, that is right before the big captivity, the big
Yeah.
exile in 586. And Nebuchadnezzar is already down here laying siege to Jerusalem. It's a 2-year siege, so it's been going on for 9 months? I think it's about, yeah, it's been going on for a while. Yeah, 9 months after the siege started in Jerusalem. So they're in the process of getting taken over. However, if that date is right, it would be after the big.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Interesting.
So it would just be referring to maybe a different deportation, because there
Well,
was 3.
Yeah.
2 of them were really big.
Well, either way, it could be. It doesn't necessarily so much matter because he's talking about another nation here. This is all against Tyre. So
Gotcha.
Tyre. So go ahead, verse 2. We'll read the first 14 verses.
Alright. Verse 2. Alright. Son of man, Tyre has rejoiced over the fall of Jerusalem, saying, Ha! Exclamation point. She who was the gateway to the rich trade routes to the east has been broken, and I am the heir. Because she has been made desolate, I will become wealthy.
Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says: I am against you, Tyre, and I will bring many nations against you, like the seas casting up its waves.
They shall destroy the walls of Tyre and break down her towers. I will scrape her soil from her and make her a bare rock.
Out in the sea she will become a place to spread fish nets, for I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. She will become plunder for the nations.
And her daughters on the mainland shall be killed by the sword. Then they will know that I am the Lord.
This is what the sovereign Lord says. From the north I will bring King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon against Tyre. He is king of kings, and bringing his horses, chariots, charioteers, and great army.
He will revenge your settlements on the mainland with the sword. He will set up sage works against you, build a ramp up to your walls, and raise his shields against you.
He will direct the shock of his battering rams against your walls, and with his axes he will break down your towers.
His horses will be so many that they will cover you with dust. Your walls will tremble at the noise of the war horses, wagons, and chariots when he enters your gates, as men enter a city whose walls have been broken through.
With the hooves of his horses he will trample all your streets. He will kill your people with the sword, and your mighty pillars will fall to the ground.
They will plunder all your riches and merchandise and break down your walls. They will destroy your lovely homes and dump your stones and timbers and even your dust into the sea.
I will put an end to your noisy songs and the music of your harps will be heard no more.
I will make you a bare rock. You shall be a place for the spreading of nets. You shall never be rebuilt, for I am the Lord. I have spoken, declares the Lord God.
Okay.
That's intense.
Yeah, it is. And not only intense, but it's accurate. Now, Tyre is located up north. Tyre and Sidon is really close by. Now, what is unique about the region of Tyre?
Didn't they have an island?
They did. So their city is located on the coast, a big part of them. And then they had another small offshore, well, not small, but an offshore fortified island too. So anytime someone came to attack Tyre, they could retreat back to their island and they were pretty much untouchable.
Okay.
So not only that, but what's the other benefit? If you have a waterway right here, that means you can have a port. If you have a port, that means ships can come in and come out.
Right.
And ships can carry good stuff, right? So
Right.
trading was huge here. So Tyre would get rich. Sidon actually started off bigger, but then Tyre crept up and overtook them. So they'd be rich from all the trade. They get trade from the mainland, they get trade from the sea, and they could even charge people, port fees. That's all we pay for on cruises anyway, is big old port fees, right? They could charge them just, hey, do you want to trade here? Just pay this simple fee and you guys can do all your business. Everyone else is here. And it was a great business for them. So all that is interesting, but what's also interesting is the stuff that God says about Tyre and how it comes true. History of Tyre. From 587 down to 574. So that's a 13-year period, BC. Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, laid siege to the mainland of Tyre. Now, the fact that it took 13 years means that it was a hard city to conquer, right? Now, when you lay siege, what does that mean? What does it mean to lay siege to a city?
Take
Kind
over.
of
Take it out to
take
destroy
out whatever
it.
comes in and out.
Yes.
Let it die.
To cut off their supply lines, right?
Mm.
When you lay siege to it, that means you're starving them out. Because if you have a big old city with walls, which is what really defined a city anyway in those days, they have walls, it's pretty hard to conquer a city with walls. So instead of wasting all your troops and manpower trying to run into the walls and getting shot from above with an arrow or whatever, or having hot melted stuff dumped on you, which would be even worse, they would just camp out. They say, hey, we've got all the land here, we've got a supply line of food, and we'll cut off everyone from getting in. So they are completely reliant on whatever's inside this city, which will be used up in no time with all the people who've fled there.
That's the significance to them, him saying that their nets won't catch anything. Because even when they flee to their port, if they can't catch anything, they can't.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point. But the thing that I thought was interesting is the fact that for 13 years he's laying siege to them. That means even this mainland here was very difficult to conquer. He couldn't conquer the fortress out there at sea. But the mainland had so much stuff, they were able to survive 13 years of the siege of Babylon, the powerhouse of the day. That's kind of a big deal.
Wow.
But you remember that there were at least 5 major assaults to Tyre. But the next big one came in 332. And Alexander the Great did this. It only took him 7 months. It was a 7-month siege, but so that's the Greeks. But what did Alexander do to take over Tyre? What was
Sunk
the
a bunch
big
of
thing?
ships and walked across them to the mainland.
Almost.
Right to the
What he
island.
did was he took the rubble that Babylon had caused when it came in and it wiped out way earlier. He took a lot of that rubble. He came in 7 months in that period. He took all the rubble from the city and they started throwing it in the water. And they created a land bridge that led all the way over to the fortress city of Tyre. Because Alexander knew he didn't have a good navy. There's no way he was going to be able to get over there and win. But he had a great army. And so his great army built a land bridge over.
Crazy.
Really crazy. But all that was prophesied ahead of time. God saying this stuff, is going to happen. And it does. After that, though, the region was taken over then. Then a little bit later, let's see. Ooh. There was another siege. There's another one in 3:14. We won't go into details. I'm not going to quiz you on this or anything, but it's just interesting. Then, way later, in AD 636, we've got Arabs over in that region. Then the Crusaders in 1124. This place is brutalized, you know. That would be the Crusaders. They took that from the Arabs, and then the Arabs took it again in 1291.
Tyre was just basically.
That Tyre is getting, I mean, it's getting like, I picture like a rag doll getting ripped around, torn to shreds or whatever. But that's what's going on. So what is left today is interesting.
Bunch of tires.
There is a city of Tyre, but it's not, yeah, it'd be funny if it was.
Nobody
But the
wanted
city
it.
of Tyre is not located on the actual exact spot of land that the old city was. Where the old city was, guess what's there now?
Nothing.
A fishing village. Not a city, a fishing village. A place that you spread nets on this bare rock. And didn't we just read that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just read that that was going to happen. Well, that's the way, my understanding, that's the way it is right now, which is
You used to be
curious.
able to support, how many people do you think?
What's that?
How many people do you think it used to be?
Oh, I don't know, but it had to be a huge commercial enterprise, you know.
And now it's like nothing, right?
Nothing but a small fishing village, and modern Tyre is located a few miles away from the original site.
That's today, like, right.
Yeah, my understanding is, like, the old youth minister here, when he went over, he got to see it, and he said he saw fish nets spread out on rocks and stuff, which is kind of cool. Because a lot of times Bible prophecies aren't that specific as far as our day and age. Like, there could have been a period of time where they spread their nets or whatever, and then it got destroyed.
Yeah.
Or people come in and rebuild it, but there are no original inhabitants there, so it's not Tyre anymore, it's modern day whatever.
Yeah.
But this is one of those things where it just coincidentally today we can go over there and I'm like, oh,
Wow.
what do you know? So that's kind of cool when that happens. God never promises that would happen today, that we get to see that, but it's cool that we do, you know.
Right, right.
So it's encouraging. Finish up the chapter. Did we leave off in verse 15?
Right.
Yes. Powerful.
No, it's.
That's cool.
I forgot.
Chris, 15.
15. Thank you.
26:15?
26:15.
Alright. This is what the sovereign Lord says to Tyre. Will not the coastlands tremble at the sound of your fall, when the wounded groan and the slaughter takes place in you?
Then all the princes of the sea will step down from their thrones and remove their robes and strip off their embroidered garments. They will clothe themselves with trembling. They will sit on the ground and tremble every moment and be appalled at you.
Then they will wail for you, singing this funeral song, O famous land city, once ruler of the sea, how you have been destroyed. Your people with their naval power once spread fear around the world.
Are you done?
18. Yeah.
Okay. Now the coastlands tremble, and on the day of your fall, the islands and the sea are terrified at your collapse.
For thus says the Lord God, when I make you a city laid waste, like the cities that are not inhabited, when I bring up the deep over you, and the great waters cover you,
Then I will bring you down with those who go down to the pit, to the people of long ago. I will make you dwell on the earth below, as in ancient ruins, with those who go down to the pit, and you will not return or take your place in the land of the living.
I will bring you to a dreadful end, and you shall be no more. Though you be sought for, you will never be found again, declares the Lord. Wow, what a nice ending to Tyre. But he's not done. He's going to talk more about him. When it talks about the lower earthly parts, that means getting covered with the sea, but that really kind of symbolizes death. I mean, when you're drowning in the ocean, you're dying, you're dead. One of the things that I read, though, and I don't think I made a note of it, but I wrote down that verse 21 is probably talking about the mainland of Tyre, but it could also be referring to its people more specifically. But my understanding is that the fortress island area, and I may have this wrong, so you have to double check this, but it had a really thick wall around it, and one of the purposes of that wall was keeping the water at bay. And if that wall got destroyed, water would wash in and destroy a lot of stuff too. So the fact that he talks about that, he seems to allude to that kind of thing happening, and it fits with what we know in history too. That they had a wall there, and I think that was out in the island. I don't think it was on the mainland, but I could be wrong about that. So you have to check that out and see. But anyway, I found that interesting. All right, we're going to do chapter 27 and chapter 28, and those are very interesting.
Can
Big
I
ones.
ask real quick?
Sure.
I don't know if we talked about this now, but or tonight.
Mhm.
What did Tyre do to make God so angry?
Oh.
To make him want to destroy him so hardcore?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. We will talk more in more detail about it,
Okay.
but a huge part was pride.
Really?
Actually, yeah, he was really arrogant. That not just he, not just one king, all the kings.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the modern day equivalent to people who are rich and reliant upon their riches instead of God, not
Yeah.
rich towards God. It's almost as though he makes a strong example out of him for that very reason, in addition to probably, antagonizing God's people too.
Well, doesn't it say at one point, or actually that might have been a different one, but it said something about you like gloated in the
Yeah.
fall of other people, which actually another one said at the very beginning was the clapping and dancing.
Yeah,
So God's
yeah.
really against the whole gloating thing.
Yeah, he is. And I guess we got to be careful then, because it's very easy to be happy when or just to gloat, but that's not a good thing. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up though. But I think more of that will come out too. But pride is a big one. Chapter 27. Parker, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Let's
Sorry,
read
guys,
the
pretty
first
good.
11 verses.
Madison's kicking in.
All right, man.
I'll go strip it down.
Good night.
Alright, man.
You made it halfway though.
Have a safe ride home, bro.
You're blocking our camera though, so
Crap.
try not to bump it on your way out.
Don't say crap about me. I'm sinning.
How are you gonna be able to do this? I'll let you navigate through there.
Come here.
Come on.
People are really going to enjoy watching this someday.
Yeah.
Anyone ever watches this online.
You're gonna sneak
Who
behind.
was that guy?
Sneak
What
back.
was he doing? What was he talking about? It's
You
crazy.
got it.
Well, he's sneaking.
Thanksgiving.
He's sneaking behind. So if you feel the
I
vibrating.
wish the camera could actually see this right now because it's
I know.
kind of fun to watch, but oh well. Just adjust it if you bump it, please. It's like the slowest
Just imagine a
departure
really
ever
big guy trying to fit.
in a really tiny space
Really tiny
while
space.
holding
And
stuff
it's
and
working.
balancing.
Well done.
Success, good job.
Like, I'm out, bro.
See you there.
Hey, can you do me a favor?
So,
He's thinking.
Can you start in the first verse and then we'll go around to verse 11?
Alright, so verse 1 to 11.
Yeah, one verse at a time.
Verse 1 to 11. Cool. Then this message came to me from the Lord. Nice.
Yeah. Son of man, take up a lament. Is that right? Lament?
Yeah,
Lament?
lament, like
Lament.
you're mourning or
Okay.
like country music, something bad happened to your dog and it died, and so you
Mhm.
sing country music. It's so depressing and sad.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I don't really like country music, so I like to make fun of it.
Me neither.
But yeah,
Yeah.
a lament.
Alright. Son of man, take up a lament concerning Tyre.
And say to Tyre, who dwells at the entrances to the sea, merchants of the people to many coastlands, thus says the Lord God. Well, O Tyre, you have said, I am perfect in beauty.
Your borders are in the heart of the seas. Your builders made perfect your beauty.
You were like a great ship built of the finest cypress form seer.
Is it sinews or I don't know?
It's SENIR. And then the
Oh,
one before it.
Sinear, yeah.
Sinear.
I'm just guessing.
They took a cedar from Lebanon to make a mass for you.
Remember that those cedars of Lebanon were famous,
They're like huge, aren't they?
huge forest trees, yeah. So they're used throughout. Verse 6.
Of oaks from Bashan they made our oars, your oars. Of cypress wood from the coast of Cyprus they made your deck. Bourne with ivory. Yeah, Bourne with ivory.
Expensive stuff there.
Yeah.
A fine embroidered linen from Egypt was your sail, serving as your banner, blue and purple from the coast of Elisha.
Yeah.
Was your awning.
The inhabitants of Sidon and Arvad were your rowers. Your skilled men, O Tyre, were in you. They were your pilots.
Wise old craftsman from Gebal did the caulking.
Yeah. Caulking, caulk.
Oh, that's okay.
It's like they did that back then, yeah.
I didn't realize they did that.
Can't have a leaking ship.
Yeah. Ships from every land came with goods to barter for your trade.
Men of Perisha, Leda, and Put served as soldiers in your army. They hung their shields and their helmets on your walls, bringing you splendor.
Men of Arvad and Hilik were on your walls all around, and men of Gamad were in your towers. They hung their shields on your walls all around. They made perfect your beauty.
Okay, we'll pause just for a reading break here. So, we're still talking about Tyre, but this gets more into the pride thing that we were mentioning earlier, Andrew. What is Tyre being pictured as, though? What is the metaphor?
This is super beautiful
Beautiful
ship.
place.
A really beautiful ship is the idea. That's the picture. It's like this gigantic ship, and then he explains the details of it. But the details of this ship correspond to things in real life. Cedars of Lebanon, oaks of Bashan, things like that. So, and that's on purpose, because he's trying to emphasize the reason why this place is so proud, this leader would be so proud, because he had all this good stuff going for him. All this was probably coming through there in trade. All these different people, rowing his oars and things like that, were groups that, through their trade, through commerce, were helping them out and making them rich. Everyone was making them rich. Location-wise, you know what they say in realty, location. Well, it's perfect, because you got all the big nations over here come in, these guys in the land can come in.
And Babylon, Egypt down there.
Yeah, they could feel untouchable. And in the other map that we showed, I don't remember if you saw it or not, but
Yeah, I
with
saw that.
Assyria and Egypt, Tyre's been around for a long time, but they're like smack in the middle of the boundaries there, so it's a perfect place for trade too, fairly neutral. All right, 12 through 25. Is that me? I think it's me, right?
I have no idea.
I think it's me. I'll go ahead and read. Tarshish did business with you because of your great wealth of every kind, silver, iron, tin, and lead. They exchanged for your wares.
Alright.
Just do the best you can.
Yeah. Merchants from Greece, Tubal, and Meshach.
Yeah, Meshach or whatever.
Meshach. Alright. Brought slaves and articles of bronze to trade with you.
You're going to do your best.
Men of Beth Togarmah
Yeah.
exchanged chariot horses, cavalry horses, and mules for your merchandise.
The men of Dedan traded with you many coastlands. Many coastlands were your own special markets. They brought you in payment ivory tusk and ebony.
Syria did business with you because of your abundant goods. They exchanged your wares for your wares, emeralds, purple, embroidered work, fine linen, coral, and ruby.
That was... I'm on 17.
Yeah,
right?
you're on
Okay.
17.
Judah and Israel traded for your wares, offering wheat from Minitha figs, honey, olive oil, and balm, or balm.
Yeah, balm.
Balm.
Yeah.
Damascus did business with you because of your many products and great wealth of goods. They offered wine from Helbon, wool from Zahar, and
In cask of wine from Uzal. They exchanged for you wares, wrought iron, cassia, and calamus were battered for your merchandise.
Bartered, yeah, like trading.
Bartered.
Dedan traded with you in saddlecloths for riding.
The Aramans, and the princes of Kedar sent merchants to trade lambs and rams and male goats in exchange for your goods.
the merchants of Sheba and Ramah traded with you. For your merchandise they exchanged the finest of all kinds of spices, and precious stones and gold.
Haran, Cana, Eden, traders of Sheba, Asher, and Kilmad traded with you.
In your market, these traded with you in choice garments, in clothes of blue and embroidered work, in carpets of colored material bound with cords and made secure.
The ships of Tarshish were your ocean caravans. Your island warehouse was filled to the brim.
All right, pause there, take a little break. I like this ship analogy because I find it amusing. I think it's kind of fun. But real quick, look at those verses, and we don't have to get everything because there's so much mentioned. But I'm going to try to attempt to draw a ship. Here we go. Got the big old flag. Yeah, one of these kinds.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Nice.
Now, what all is on this ship?
A lot of
talking.
goods.
Start talking. What?
Gold.
Iron,
Gold, iron. I'm gonna get real sloppy.
tin,
Tin, lead.
Lead.
What else?
Ivory,
ivory,
Lead,
gems,
ivory,
Pearls.
pearls,
blue cloth,
pearls,
Fine linen.
purple. What's the significance of purple, by the way?
royalty.
the royalty, yeah.
Royalty. Purple came from these
Snail.
oysters that they literally had to go down, find these oysters, open them up, and extract the tiniest little amount of purple dye. And it was so cumbersome that's why the color purple was so expensive in those days. The royalty could afford it. And even then, they wouldn't have like usually an entirely purple garment. It'd have purple on it, which is super significant because it's so much work to get that. So that's why when he says purple, jewels, emerald,
Multicolored carpets,
carpets. Ooh, wonderful carpets.
bound cords, it says bound, they were bound with cords.
Okay, cords. What else is on this ship? Anything else I missed?
There's so much.
Blue
Choice
fabric.
fabrics,
Okay, fabric,
Embroidered work.
embroidery,
saddle blankets,
Beautiful garments.
garments. It's getting so sloppy. What did you say before?
Fragrant.
Saddle something.
they dropped fragrances.
Incense. Okay, is that most of it?
I mean, no, but yeah.
All right. Well, we have spices. Can't do that. Spices. We have the idea
No, you
of
can
all
make
these
food
things
taste good.
that this ship is loaded down with, all this stuff, and that's going to lead into the picture. These are all the people that they're making trade with, and the stuff that they have. It's like they're filling up, they're filling up, they're filling up, and then verse 26, the rest of the chapter, it says, "Your rowers have brought you out into the high seas. The east wind has wrecked you in the heart of the seas." Verse 27.
Sorry, I was reading that.
That's all right.
Everything is lost, your riches and wares, your sailors and pilots. Your shipbuilders, merchants, and warriors, on the day of your ruin, everyone on board sinks into the depths of the sea.
The shorelands will quake when your sailors cry out.
And down from their ships come all who handle the oar. The mariners and all the pilots of the sea stand on the land.
And shout aloud over you and cry out bitterly. They cast dust on their heads and wallow in ashes, which is how they mourned in those days.
They shave their heads in grief for you, and dress themselves in burlap. They weep for you with bitter anguish and deep mourning.
As they wail and mourn over you, they will take up a lament concerning you. Who was ever silenced like Tyre, surrounded by the sea?
When your wares came from the seas, you satisfied many people. With your abundant wealth and merchandise, you enriched the kings of the earth.
Now you are wrecked by the seas and the depths of the waters. Your merchandise and all your crew in your midst have sunk with you.
Sorry, I'm waiting for the next page to load. All of you who live along the coastlands are appealed at your terrible fate. Their kings are filled with horror and look on with twisted faces.
36.
Yeah, last verse.
The merchants among the nations scoff at you. You have come to a horrible end and will be no more.
My translation says hiss at you. I think of like what cats do.
Yeah.
Was that what?
Verse 36, the merchants, the peoples.
That's terrible.
So,
That's kind of
you figured out why I think this is funny, right? Their ship is so loaded down with stuff that what happens to it?
Crashes.
Crashes.
It starts to crack.
These winds.
The crack gets bigger, that wind gushes against it, and then it splits apart, and all the people on it, including all the stuff, is just, oh wait, we gotta have water now, right? All this stuff is just falling overboard into the water. Now what good is all this treasure if it's gone in the sea? If it's all on one ship and the ship breaks? Not much good. What good are the people? Not much good. They're gonna die. They're gonna drown. And so, I mean, this is a long, long way of saying it, which is probably for emphasis, but this is a simple illustration. You can have a fun devotion with this too, you know, like the ship that just overloaded itself, and then ultimately God took it down. Now, what is a New Testament parable that fits this same lesson that Jesus talked about? It's a quick one.
I'm not sure. I keep on thinking, oh wow.
That you're gonna fall.
Well, I foresaw it. Anyways, I keep on thinking of like, too much is given, much is expected, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
Definitely what Tyre did not do.
This is a parable about a rich man, though, that Jesus talks
the
about.
rich young ruler.
Not the rich young ruler specifically. He's not named, but all Jesus really focuses on is his barns. The rich man had barns and had such a wonderful crop that he packed his barns full, and then he thought, man, I've still got food left over. What am I going to do? Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and I'll build bigger barns, and then I'll store up all this wonderful food, and I'll say to myself, soul, you have food stored up for years to come. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry.
Yeah.
And then God says, you fool. This very night your life will be required of you. Then who's going to get all this wonderful stuff that you had? The rich fool is the idea. The guy that wanted more stuff.
Matthew?
You remember that? I think it is.
I've never heard that one.
You haven't? Oh, yes, you have.
Sounds
You have.
familiar.
You're not thinking of it right now.
Yeah.
So,
But the man who built the barns, it's a real short little reference.
Yeah.
But the man who wanted bigger barns, the rich man. And
Has to be
it was
Matthew.
because he was selfish, he wasn't rich towards God, and because of that he lost his stuff. So that's a New Testament allusion to this same thing that happened with Tyre. So it'd be neat to do a comparison with those two. If you're ever teaching a lesson, especially since a lot of people, get bothered by the Old Testament. They're like, oh, well, we're New Testament Christians or whatever. and they forget that, well, the Old Testament is still the same God that's in the New Testament, you know, and can't forget that, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the same lessons are still being taught. And Jesus didn't come to wipe out the law, he came to fulfill the law, which is different. It all leads up to Jesus, not, oh, it diminishes. It's a little different than that.
Dude, that's the thing I dig so much about like our Hebrew class and doing this, like seeing all like the messianic prophecies. That's just
Oh, yeah.
Like-
Hebrews. Oh,
Oh
yeah.
my
All
goodness.
kinds of good stuff. But I just thought that was funny. Here's the Old Testament version, and a lot of the New Testament stories and events are going to be paralleled by the Old Testament. It's just you got to search to find them. And so we found one. Now this next chapter we're going to get into is fairly long. It's still about Tyre, and then it switches to Sidon. And you got a question. We'll get to that right now. What is your question?
Verse 33, it says, when your wares came from the seas, you satisfied many people with your abundant wealth and merchandise. So are they saying that their stuff pleased people?
Yeah, I think all it's talking about is because they were a coastal land, people would come from the sea with stuff to trade, and then because of that, other people were there, and it's like, yes, look, I could get my Babylonian robe, I can get my Egyptian cotton, I can get my, you know what I'm saying, like my Arabian turban, the thing that I always wanted. And where could I get all that stuff? Nowhere but Tyre. Yay! It's all this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you satisfied everyone because trade was coming in from everywhere. Whereas any other place, you couldn't get all that stuff. It'd be really hard to find.
Dude,
So,
Tyre's
it
stinking
came from the
cold.
sea, meaning the ships that came in that brought all this wealth, probably. That's probably what he's alluding to.
Do you think Tyre's like Walmart or something?
Because when I first read it,
They get more expensive, but yeah.
when I first read it, I thought it was saying that all the merchandise like went to sea.
Oh, went out
I
to
meant
sea.
went out to land, but it says that it stuck with the king.
Yeah,
But-
yeah.
I was like, oh, that's
Now, the other thing is, I think it was in the region of Tyre, or at least nearby. It was in a specific region where those oysters were that you could get the purple dye from. And, you know, that was worth a lot too. And if it was in their region, that's another thing that they got from the sea that would satisfy people. Was all the kings wanted, you know, purple threads. Gotta have purple threads. Now,
Whoa.
chapter 28 is about the Prince of Tyre, which prince, royalty, leader, probably not one specific person, probably just all of them generically, the kings. But because of what is said there, people have often said that this passage refers to Satan. So we're going to read through it first, and then we'll make some comments about that and see. But see if you see why. I'm sure you'll see why. And you've probably thought about this before too. You definitely had questions about it at least. Let's read the first 10 verses of this. Is it up to me now?
I'll take it.
Just because you like that first verse. Go ahead.
Yeah. Then this message came to me from the Lord.
I got the long one.
Sorry, man.
Alright. Son of man, say to the ruler of Tyre, this is what the sovereign Lord says. In the pride of your heart you say, I am a god. I sit on the throne of a god, and in the heart of the seas. But you are a mere mortal, and not a god. Though you think you are as wise as a god.
You are indeed wiser than Daniel. No secret is hidden from you.
Now, pause for a
Whoa.
second. Daniel is mentioned, which is fascinating. We've had a discussion about this before. Daniel would be fairly young at this time. He's one of the exiles up here in Babylon around the time that Ezekiel was, so he's a contemporary. And Jeremiah is the guy that's back here before, and he goes up there too. So a lot of these guys are at the same time. But liberal scholars do not want Daniel to be this early. And so they'll say, oh, this must be a different Daniel or something. And it's just, it doesn't make, their argument doesn't hold water. But the reason why they want that is because Daniel makes super specific prophecies about history. He says that he lays out what the Persians are going to do, what the Greeks are going to do, what's going to lead up to the time of Messiah in such great specific detail that liberal scholars who don't want to believe that the Bible is inspired or anything like that say, well, it had to have been written later, you know, like after that stuff already happened. So he's just recounting history. but stuff like this goes totally against that.
Yeah.
So it is clearly inspired, and it's amazing that, you know, we've got references to verify that Daniel was written back here. Where are we? 587 now,
587.
roughly, something like that.
What,
Anyway, way back then.
So during this time, would it basically begin, like Daniel hadn't started his ministry yet?
Yeah, he had.
He had, okay.
Yeah, he would be young, but he would be one of the wise men in Nebuchadnezzar's court.
So,
And
early
so
in
he
his
probably
ministry.
had, I think we talked about this before, it'd be early on. He'd be a younger man at this time, but Daniel lives for a really long time.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, he probably already had a good reputation of being a wise person, because why would he be mentioned here if not? So.
Well, yeah, and when it adds special emphasis to how this
Yeah.
guy's wise.
Do you have
and
something too?
Daniel's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, can you read your version real quick one more time, just verse 3? Gabe?
You are indeed wiser than Daniel. No secret is hidden from you.
See that?
What does
That's
yours say?
mine says, "Are you wiser than Daniel?" Question
Yeah,
mark. Is
yeah.
no secret hidden from you?
Sure.
Is it?
Both of those are actually similar.
Yeah.
I think yours is more literal, but I really think it's meant in a sarcastic
Mhm.
tone anyway. It's like, oh yeah, you're better than him. No, not really.
Yeah.
So I think your version, for us English people, it helps us understand more of the thought,
Yeah.
because the idea is, no, you're not.
Mhm.
It just like what he said before. You said, I'm a god. I sit in the seat of gods.
Yeah.
That's not true. That's not true at all. And so when right after that he says, you are indeed wiser than Daniel, I think he's being completely sarcastic. He's oozing sarcasm there. And so
The way
you
mine
can say
says
it that
it,
way.
the way mine says is you regard yourself as wiser than Daniel, so it's kind of pointing to the fact that they think they
Yeah,
are.
but literally, I think the more literal version is going to be, you are wiser than Daniel,
Mhm.
but
Cool.
Yeah, that was confusing.
it's probably the way they said that. Yeah, it's good. Verse 4 says, by your wisdom and your understanding, you have made wealth for yourself and have gathered gold and silver into your treasuries.
Yes, your wisdom has made you very rich, and your riches have made you very proud.
Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says: because you think you are wise as a god.
Therefore, behold, I will bring foreigners upon you, the most ruthless of the nations, and they shall draw their swords against the beauty of your wisdom and defile your splendor.
They shall thrust you down into a pit, and you shall die in the death of you shall die the death of the slain in the heart of the seas.
Can I just say, I think it's funny that they refer to Babylon as foreigners. I just dig that for some reason. It's those foreigners.
Well, to them, they're the people way out there. Remember before, to the Israel or Judah, who were pictured as whores by God, they were the mystery men from the east.
Yeah,
and
that's
the
right.
turbans or whatever. Yeah, they were pictured as far out people too.
Yeah, you missed an interesting job.
Oh man, yeah.
Alright. You will then boast, I am a god, though to those who kill you, question mark, to them you will be no god, but merely a man.
You will die the death of an uncircumcised. You will die the death of the uncircumcised at the hands of foreigners. I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord.
Now, what does it mean when it says the uncircumcised? What does that mean?
The outcasts.
Unclean.
Yeah, literally though, what does that mean?
Gentile.
Yeah,
Gentiles,
Gentile, literally not God's people. And to Jews, a lot of times that, oh, well, they're
That's better than them.
yeah, exactly, we're better than them and stuff. So it can be used that way. But there again, when it talks about the prince here, there's going to be a lot of language like this. It talks about your heart being proud. I'm a god. Now, some might think, wait a minute, were they really that stupid that they believe that they are God? Maybe, I don't know. A lot of times, the people of the day regarded the king, certain kings, as deity, not just kings. And, like Pharaoh was worshipped as, God, as a god. And a lot of times the great kings were pictured as, sometimes as that, sometimes as like being the sun, the moon, the stars, things like that. And people worship those things too. So that all ties together with this idea of being a god or deity of some kind. And so maybe his head was getting that full. Maybe not. Maybe he just let other people say it about him and didn't stop them. God really got mad at a man named Herod in the book of Acts who did that. People said, wow, this is the voice of a god, not a man, because he gave this amazing speech. And so God, remember what God did to Herod then? He inflicted him with worms, flesh-eating worms, and he ate him from the inside out. Just ate him.
Oh, that's sick.
Oh, it's so disgusting, but what if you saw that? Like, that's what happened with the other guy. Apparently this pride thing is a big deal to God, so yeah.
Even King Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah,
He
turned into an animal for a while, didn't he?
Eat grass.
That's so true.
Wait, what did he turn into?
He was like an animal. He went crazy for
for
a period of 7 times. Some people think 7 years. It doesn't exactly say 7 times, so a complete amount of time. He was crazy. Even if it was a few months, that still is wild.
He turned into an animal. Nice.
Yeah, not literally.
Yeah,
but
no,
he
I get what
looked
you're
like
saying.
one or whatever. So, all the kings of Tyre, what I want you to see is the kings of Tyre are what we're talking about here. That is what the context says, and if you want to be faithful to it, you got to stick with that. But some people are going to, say more, and so we'll talk more about that. 11 through 14.
Moreover, the word of the Lord came to me.
Son of man, raise a lamentation over the king of Tyre, and say to him, thus says the Lord God, you were the signet of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty.
You were in Eden, the garden of God. Your clothes were adorned with every precious stone, red something.
Like carnelian or something.
Yeah, carnelian. Peel green, peridot, white moonstone, blue green barley, onyx.
Yeah, onyx.
Okay, onyx. Green jasper, blue. Dude, this is crazy. Blue
A lot of stones.
lapis,
Mhm.
lazuli. Okay. Turquoise and emerald. All beautiful crafts for you and set in the finest gold. They were given to you on the day you were created.
You were anointed as a guardian cherub, for so I adorned you. You were on the holy mount of God. You walked among the is that what that word is? F-I-E.
Fiery.
Yeah.
Oh.
Is it fiery?
Yeah, I guess so. Fiery stones.
You were blameless in your ways. From the day you were created, so unrighteousness was found in you.
In the abundance of your trade you were filled with violence in your midst, and you sinned. So I cast you as a profane thing from the mountain of God, and I destroyed you, O guardian cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire.
Your heart was filled with pride because of all your beauty. Your wisdom was corrupted by your love of splendor. So I threw you to the ground and exposed you to the curious gaze of kings. Curious gaze of kings? Okay, yeah, that's right.
By your many sins and dishonest trades, you have desecrated your sanctuaries. So I made a fire come out from you, and it consumes you, and I reduce you to ashes on the ground, in the sight of all who are watching.
All who know you among the peoples are appalled at you. You have come to a dreadful end, and shall be no more forever.
Okay, that finishes up what he says about Tyre. Now, some people think that this passage is double prophetic. It's not only talking about the king of Tyre, but who else would it be talking about? A guardian cherub? Beautiful,
Yeah, I was about to
made
say,
flawless,
he compared him to an angel, which
an
was
angel
where they
of
get the
God.
devil.
You were in Eden. Who would that be referring to? Someone in Eden, an anointed guardian cherub, perfect, made wonderful until evil was found in
The
them.
serpent.
Yeah, Satan. A lot of people, this is where people get the idea about Satan in the fall. Not the only place, though. I think in the New Testament it does talk about the trap of the devil, how pride was his undoing. So I do think it happened. I think Satan is a fallen angel. You know, that at one point in time was good, and then he fell. And that his fall could have taken place in the garden right then. That could have been it. You know, it's not like we would have seen it necessarily. It's spiritual battle. But regardless of that, the fall did happen. But if they say more than that, they're probably getting it from this passage.
This is off a little bit,
Okay.
but I think it was the other day in Mark's Hebrews class where he was talking about how at the crucifixion they saw Satan getting shot down like lightning or whatever.
Oh yeah, before actually my grandfather brought that up.
Okay.
And yeah, I saw Satan fall like lightning, but it was before it actually happened. It was a
Okay.
prefigurement or whatever.
But why? I don't know. When I hear that and I think to myself, oh, he came down from the heavens like lightning, that makes me think like, okay, during this entire period was Satan just chillaxing around or whatever.
Oh.
I know, like, I've heard theories of people saying like, oh, that's the fall of Satan or whatever, and I'm like, no, but
Yeah.
I'm just confused by it by a little bit. I don't know if you have time to.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I don't know if I can answer all those questions either. Dad goes into more detail about it. It seems as though there's a time when he's able to roam the earth and be more free, and then he is fallen, meaning he's loses some of that freedom.
Just kind of the all millennialist view of things.
Yeah, yeah. But even throughout the Bible, you know, after Job, you don't see much of Satan. Like, Satan doesn't come into the presence of God anymore after Job. We don't see anything written of that. But apparently he was able to before, even though he was clearly not righteous at that time.
Yeah.
So there was some sort of a fall that happened probably in that, but it's just hard to say because I don't know. Dad might be able to give you better answers on that.
Gotcha.
What I wanted you guys to be aware of, though, is that this passage is the main one, I think, where people get all this stuff about Satan. And it could be referring to Satan. I honestly don't know. I know it's referring to the king of Tyre. I know that because that's what the context says. It doesn't say it's referring to Satan. But I do understand how you could look at this and say, man, it sure sounds like he's hinting at, you know, more than... I mean, he's really blowing up this king of Tyre, saying you are in Eden. Now, Eden is the beautiful garden of God that he made for the first man and woman, mankind. But, you know, foreign temples in those days would also have a nice, beautiful garden surrounding them. And, you know, even pagan gods. So it could have been, he's just referring to that, like, oh, you have your Eden, like, beautiful temple where you worshipped your own self and your own false god and whatever. You know, it could just be a reference to that. A cherub, by the way, cherubs, every time they're mentioned, cherubim in the plural, are guarding something. Like they're angels that guard, like that flaming sword and that cherub at the Garden of Eden to keep people from coming in. They're usually guard. So he could have had some sort of status as I am a protector. I'm guarding my wealth. You know, nobody's gonna mess with me, kind of thing. So all these references could just be to that. You know, but thrown off the mountain of God. Does that mean just the blessing of God, or does it mean something more? You know, is it talking about a higher reference to an angel? I just don't know. I'm going to leave it at that because the Bible's not completely clear, but it is possible, and some will say that. So just know this is where you're getting it from. So when you teach it or whatever, what do you do? I mean, if somebody brings it up, do you argue with them and say, that's not true, you can't prove that, blah, blah, blah? No, you don't do that. What do?
I don't know.
Yeah, you just have to teach it with a degree of humility. This is a possibility, and here's some good reasons why I think, you know, that's how you teach it. You don't teach it, this is what it is, because this is interpretation. We don't know 100%. So we've got to be, what's the word, incorrigible. We have to be completely accurate in what we say. So don't inflate ourselves. Don't, like, make up stories that didn't belong to us. Do you have a question, Gabe?
Have you heard of George Fall's view on this?
Yeah, he believes it's Satan.
You know why?
He said, I remember him saying it's a double prophecy. What else does he say, though?
Well, he gave an example explaining the
Oh,
birthday,
I remember this. Go ahead and explain
using the
it.
Pope.
Mm-hmm.
And he would explain the Pope, and he would say, I don't remember all the things that the Pope used to do, but he said that, and he would make people would kiss his ring, and people would bow down to him, and he would walk through, and and people would look at him with great authority, and then he said, "Who am I explaining? Who am I trying to explain?"
Yeah, yeah.
The Pope. He's like, and by me explaining the Pope, I'm also showing you that the president has these same characteristics.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's explaining one person, kind of hinting, this guy is basically living the same kind of way.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and my whole thinking with that is that, sure,
Right.
it could definitely be right, but at the same time, it could just be a, I see his argument though, because he's saying, if it sounds like Satan, maybe it's because Satan did all those things too, and the king of Tyre is being compared to Satan. And I think he's got merit to say that. Or it could just be, I don't know. I mean, what else would it be though? If it's not comparing it to Satan, what else would it be? It could just be straight poetic language. But I see his point, and I think it's valid, so.
Dude,
But I
he's
did like
being
what you
compared to
said.
Satan though, that's crazy.
But he might be right. I mean, I don't argue this with people because it could be true.
Yeah.
And it is interesting the way it says. I see why they would say that.
I like how what you said though about Eden, how it just means like good land.
Well, I mean, that would be the alternative. The people who don't think this is Satan and want to argue that are going to say things like, well, there are gardens around pagan temples, and a cherub, is always a guarding type of angel, so he's probably protecting his wealth, or he has this great strength and power. All these illusions do make sense that way too.
They do.
So, I guess that's all we can say about it. It's fun to talk about what we don't know.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Okay. Let's go verse 15 through 19. Hey, we're almost
Wait,
done.
20.
Wait, where are we at? Oh, we already finished that. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
we're 20.
We're at 20. Is it my turn?
Verse 20.
It is my turn.
No!
The word of the Lord came to me.
Huge stick. Alright. Son of man, turn and face the city of... Shut up. Sorry. My phone's going off. Alright.
What? That's not the name of the city. The city is Sidon, not Shut Up.
Sidon. And prophesy against it. Sorry. I'm sorry, guys.
There you go. And say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Sidon, and among you I will display my glory. You will know that I am the Lord, when I inflict punishment on you, and within you am proved to be holy.
For I will send pestilence into her, and blood into her streets, and the slain shall fall in her midst, but a sword that is against her on every side. Then they will know that I am the Lord.
And for the house of Israel there shall be no more a briar to prick or a thorn to hurt them among all their neighbors who have treated them with contempt. Then they will know that I am the Lord God. Now, it's interesting because Sidon is next to Tyre, and oftentimes the two are just mentioned together because they're so close. But even though they were together in a lot of ways, it's still worth singling them out separately too, because they are a slightly different location. Before 1000 BC, Sidon was actually a bigger, more powerful place, but after 1000, Tyre just dwarfed them, took over, and that was that. Kind of swallowed them up, I guess. They were the leader. But they're usually pictured together. Now, when it says about my people in verse 24, no more prickling or thorn or briar or whatever it says there about them to hurt them, probably talking about religious stuff, probably talking about no more of a false god to tempt you, to lure you in, no more of these wicked practices of these people around. Isn't sin like that for you guys? It's like, I'm trying to live a pure, holy life to God, but getting stabbed. What is that? Like, something's always bugging me. Do this, you should do this. You can get away with that. You know what I mean? It's like, it's constantly, it's annoying. Sometimes and you're not going to give into it, but it's annoying. It pricks or whatever. That's probably the idea. The same kind of sins that the Canaanites wanted to get them into, worshiping their gods, And one of the reasons why they want to worship false gods is because some of the false teaching was, you could have a lot of sex, a lot of it was fertility gods and goddesses and stuff like that, and some of it involved prostitutes and things. So it's very convenient, you know what I mean? Like, it's very tempting for people who are already tempted anyway to, you know, join. Well, and apparently it's, you know, it's worship, it's church, and there's something to it, you know, and demons and probably supernatural stuff was involved, you know. Anywho, so that's the idea. And we finish up with something slightly positive here. Verse 25 and 26.
No, it's
This is what the sovereign Lord says. The people of Israel will again live in their own land, the land I gave my servant Jacob. For I will gather them from the distant lands where I have scattered them. I will reveal to the nations of the world my holiness among my people.
Yep,
Yeah.
last verse.
They will live there in safety and will build houses and plant vineyards. They will live in safety when I inflict punishment on all their neighbors who malign.
Yeah, like malign.
Maligned. Okay.
Basically, like, I don't know, spreading false rumors about them,
Okay.
insulting them.
Okay. All who malign them, they will know them. They will know that I, the Lord their God, that I am the Lord their God.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that we've hit time and time again in this class, Andrew, and we'll mention it in closing because it's important.
Okay.
Any prophecy about Israel being restored, and a lot of this is my opinion, but I believe it pretty strongly. None of us are without biases. We all have our own biases, and so you know, you have a lot of finger pointing as far as, well, how do you know that your view is right and theirs is wrong or whatever? And you go back and forth. And you should never say, oh, well, I'm unbiased or I'm being unbiased. Yeah, right. That's impossible. Might as well throw you out the window because you don't even know that you're not biased. But what we need to have is what I would call a Jesus bias. We know we're always going to have biases, but our goal is to have as much of the biases that God and Christ seem to display as we can, you know. So every time you look at the New Testament, I would say strongly the New Testament authors are inspired of God. So if they say this Old Testament prophecy means this, guess what? That's what it means.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how this intelligent scholar says something else. Doesn't matter if we think, oh, well, it may mean that, but it also means this. Okay, I suppose that's a possibility, but I see no reason to say that the main fulfillment shouldn't be what the New Testament, you know, Matthew or the New Testament inspired writer says. So in the New Testament, a big point is made. Hebrews 12:22 talks about Christians, and it says, you have come to Mount Zion, the heavenly Jerusalem. And it's like, well, wait a minute. When did you ever visit Mount Zion over there? And I don't think you did you? I mean, I haven't been there. But how does God say that I've been there? Well, in a spiritual sense, the kingdom of Christ, the future Mount Zion, the spiritual Zion is what he's talking about. In Galatians, I believe it's chapter 3 or maybe it's chapter 6. I always get confused. But it says, if you belong to Christ, you're Abraham's seed and you're heirs according to the promise. The promise for physical Israel is fulfilled with spiritual Israel, aka Christ's church. It is the kingdom that dominates the whole earth, will never be destroyed, ever. That is the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy. That's what I get with the New Testament, what I call the Jesus bias or whatever. There are a lot of groups today that say, well, yes, that is a fulfillment, but physical Israel is also, it's got something special.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. I do believe that there were certain things that Israel had that were special, but I do not believe today that there's anything unique or special about them, or that they have anything special because of their race. And I believe that for multiple reasons. One, no Jew today can prove that they're a Jew. The records were destroyed in AD 70. I've heard other people talk about, George Fall looked it up and said that, you know, it's like 1300 AD is like the earliest record you can get any Jew today. you know, which is an inflammatory thing to say, but the idea is you can't prove you're a Jew anyway. Secondly, besides that fact, nobody is saved apart from Jesus. No other name under heaven whereby which men must be saved, and that was spoken to a Jewish audience, Acts 4:12 there. So either way, they can't be saved apart from Jesus regardless. What was the other reason? They were, can't prove you're a Jew. But also what the New Testament says about them, though, that everything that is promised to the Jews makes sense in the church. So a lot of times what people get upset about is they're like, well, wait a minute. How, you know, isn't God lying? God said Israel's going to be restored. He said they're going to get this stuff. And so the illustration Doc Smith used that I like is if I promised you, I'm like, Andrew, if you meet me outside, I'm going to give you $5, okay? And then when we go outside and I'm like, all I got's 20 here, you can just take it. Would you go back in and say to these guys, Seth's a liar? That Seth is a liar. He promised me $5 and he gave me this 20. You know what I mean? You wouldn't call me a liar, right? You'd appreciate it, right? Because I gave you all that and I gave you something better.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's what God did. When God was using physical Israel, talking about them in the future, this great time of peace, they're going to be restored to this land, their borders are going to extend. He was picturing spiritual Israel, the church, which is what you and I are a part of. Every time we share the gospel, spiritual Israel is growing, and it is overtaking the world. It is that mountain that it just continually keeps growing or whatever. That's what I think is clear. So passages like this, that is my bias, how I'm going to interpret them most of the time, which is the opposite of how televangelists or a lot of colleges, or especially modern day Jewish teachers, are going to teach you. They're going to say it's something physical or literal, and we'll poke fun at it in this class, but there'll be other passages that, you know, they sound that way. So, historically, what could this be talking about? This passage could be talking about physical Israel being transferred into spiritual Israel, you know, today the church. That's a possibility. Or the other possibility is what happened during the intertestamental period leading up to the time of Jesus. Right now, the people are getting taken away captive to Babylon because they've been, you know, worshiping other gods, getting into idolatry. But later on, they're going to be taken to Persia. Persia will take them over, and Persia will let them start to come back. Then we go through the period of history with the Greeks, Judas Maccabees, all those battles and stuff. And by the time you get to the cross, before the cross really, by the time you get to the New Testament when Jesus is born, even though a lot of things are messed up, the priestly system is out of whack, a number of things like that, the Jews had learned their lesson. They were not worshiping idols anymore. They were very pharisaical, and they had their issues for sure. They were legalists, but you don't find them worshiping a whole bunch of different gods like they used to. So that could be a reference that he's talking about too. They did get to come back to their physical land. They did get to rebuild their city of Jerusalem and build its walls up, Nehemiah and Ezra. And they, at the time when Jesus came, were not worshiping other idols. They learned their lesson from all that history and they quit doing it. So that's also a good fulfillment, I think, to what he's talking about there. I don't think it's something, I don't think it's what happened in, what was it, 1940 something, when Israel was declared a place again. I don't think it's that. I think, you know, what they're probably good people, I'm not saying that, but from a biblical standpoint, you got to be a part of the church. That's the only way you're going to be saved. You got to be a spiritual Jew, not a physical one. It doesn't matter anymore. So, does that make sense? Is there any questions, any thoughts or anything? All right, let's pray. It's late. Nice. Father, thank you for allowing us to be Jews in the most important sense of that word. Thank you for the bravery of Ezekiel and him being willing to speak out. And thank you for the reminder that that justice is going to happen. A lot of times we feel like we're being poked and prodded and having to live in this world of thorns, trying to not complain and set a good example and witness to people. But ultimately, God, we know you're going to deal with everyone and make things right. And without you, they're lost. And so thank you for your justice, and thank you for the opportunity to share the good news, because as even these guys have pointed out before, we deserve to be judged the same way, but somebody was good enough to share it with us so that we could get out of that. And so please help us to return the favor to others and do a good job of that. It's in your son's name I pray.
Thanks, Seth.
Oh, thank you guys. Sorry for the late class, but
No, it was good.
now you guys have a free rest of the week.
You mean it?
No, I'm sure you won't get it.
Can you give us when?